Agradeço também o professor Robert Burns, da Universidade de West Virginia, e o professor Alan Graefe, da Universidade de Penn State, que estão aqui hoje com a gente então, para falar um pouquinho sobre o turismo em áreas naturais. O Robert vai fazer a introdução da palestra do Alan, porque o professor Alan foi orientador de doutorado dele, lá nos Estados Unidos, né? E aí eu vou traduzir isso que ele vai falar agora. E aí depois o professor Alan vai fazer a palestra, e aí eu não vou traduzir, né? É bom que vocês já comecem a entender cada vez mais o inglês, e aqueles que não entenderem muita coisa, estudem mais inglês, porque vocês sabem que no campo do turismo o inglês é muito importante, tá?
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Wir werden heute Morgen von Alan Graefe sprechen. Spricht jemand Deutsch? Okay. No, joking.
Tá brincando.
So, em Brasil, você tem muitos lugares, parks and protected areas, right? Muitos lugares, parque nacionais, lona, floresta, und so weiter. That's German for and so forth.
É difícil traduzir, porque daí eu não sei.
Oh, you don't speak German. So I want to introduce Alan Graefe.
Então ele quer fazer essa introdução do Alan.
Alan Graefe is a very esteemed professor in the U.S. Very esteemed.
É um professor muito estimado nos Estados
Berühmter.
Unidos.
No. He is a professor that's very well known in the U.S. and around the world.
Muita gente conhece ele lá nos Estados Unidos e em todo o mundo.
And he has developed management frameworks.
Então ele desenvolveu uma metodologia de manejo de visitantes.
And they focus on how a manager can design a park so that people can have a good experience.
Então ele nessa metodologia as pessoas, os gestores de parques nacionais conseguem ver como é que eles podem
with less impact on the environment.
com menos impacto nas áreas naturais.
And so it's what we call social science.
Então essas são as ciências sociais.
So it's not biological science, it's social science,
Não é
just like
ciência
tourism.
biológica, é ciência social, assim como é o turismo.
So it's more difficult to do this. But
Então é mais
if
difícil de fazer isso, mas a gente faz.
you're understanding biology,
Se vocês entendem biologia,
it's black or white.
é ou preto ou branco.
It's a tree is alive or it's dead, right?
Ou a árvore está morta ou ela está viva.
But when you involve people,
Mas quando se envolve
that's
pessoas,
when the problems start.
é quando os problemas começam.
So it's gray, it's all gray
E
area.
aí é tudo cinza.
So Alan has done a great job of merging social science with
Então
management
ela
practice.
está fazendo um bom trabalho juntando ciências sociais com a prática.
And now we introduce Alan Graefe to Brazil.
E agora então ele está apresentando o Brasil para o Alan Graefe.
So look forward to a good talk.
Então ele está esperando uma ótima palestra. Do Alan?
Thank you very much. Interesting. And Robert, thank you for your introduction. Very kind. And to you, thank you for being here. I'm very pleased to be in Brazil. This is my first trip to Brazil. I was here 1 week, last week, with these professors at the Winter Management and Measurement Workshop. So we work with park and forest managers, ICFEO. And now we have a nice weekend here in Ponta Grossa. Very nice, and very pleased to be able to talk to you this morning. So Robert mentioned, I work in park management, outdoor recreation. My talk this morning will talk about some things happening in the United States, and also some major trends that are happening, and will also include some of these management topics and frameworks that Robert mentioned.
So maybe just define trends.
São tendências. Trends.
Yeah, so I'll talk about five major trends, things that are happening in the United States in outdoor recreation management. And I'll try to illustrate those with some research examples. And actually, there's a third one that I did not put on here, but I will mention. Third objective is to really relate or compare my experience here in 1 week. 1 week in Brazil, see what's happening here. Many things are very similar experience and problems and issues to talk about. So the first trend, we'll talk about the park visitor characteristic. Who goes to the parks? What people go to the parks? And basically the traditional view, old-time view, is that people who go in parks are not very diverse. They're all very similar kinds of people. Homogeneous means similar, same. Usually they're young people. In terms of racial diversity, they're mostly white in the United States. Minorities are not participating in the park and outdoor recreation at the same, and mostly males. So females are participating at lower rates in almost all activities. Some activities, it's a very big difference. So say hunting, is hunting here? No. Forget hunting? You have fishing? Is there fishing? Okay, fishing is about the same. Much more likely the males go fishing, women don't go fishing. Some do, but not as much. So what is the new view? The trend is much more diversity in outdoor recreation. So now we see that everyone of all ages is more likely to participate. People are concerned with physical fitness and health, and we see this even at the restaurant last night, the Madero, famous restaurant, very good hamburger, I must say. Like very much. Glad to see we have one of those in the United States, in Miami, far away from me. Anyway, I saw the theme there. They are making quality, good healthy food, and very popular, very good response from population to the new fitness menu that they're offering there. We're seeing the same thing. People in the United States are more physically active. They're seeking good health and good peace and good life balance. They're more culturally diverse. People going to the parks, and we're seeing more equal males and females. So that's the first trend. Just the type of visitor or the visitor characteristics. Now let me give one example of this. So this example is from a study in California, where there is a more diverse population in Southern California, around Los Angeles, Hollywood area. There's more diversity in the population. So there was a study that we did with our U.S. Forest Service, and it actually did a survey of visitors, asked them questions. They're out at the forest, and it asked them about their information. Where do they get information? What are their needs for information? What are they looking for? Maybe maps, guidebooks, different kinds of information. What are their information needs and preferences? So we looked at that, and then we compared the different groups. And I'll just give a quick summary of the findings. No detailed results or tables here, but what we did see is some very strong differences in the patterns for different ethnic groups. So in our case, one of the major ethnic groups in America is Hispanics, especially because that's close to the borderline with Mexico. So there's many Mexican Americans in that area, and they are lumped into a group called Hispanic. They seek a different kind of information. They're less likely. The Forest Service provides things. They provide maps, books, guidebooks, and that sort of thing, brochures. Hispanics are less likely to use any of those. They're more likely to just use word of mouth, informal communication. They get information from family, friends. Word of mouth is much more common. And what we saw is it was more complicated than just to compare Hispanics versus other racial groups like white or African American. It really depends also on their activity. So in our parks and forests, many places, or most of the visits to the forest, the national forest or park or state one, it's mostly for day use. You just go there one day. You might be there several hours. Maybe you're only there a couple hours, maybe all day, but then you go home at night. You don't stay overnight. But in the American parks and forests, we also have a lot of overnight use. It's mostly camping. So people go and camp, they have the tent or the recreation vehicle. They go and they stay there maybe for a couple nights, maybe a weekend, maybe longer vacation. But the campers, they use different sources of information. They need more information for their activity. So we saw there's a big difference between the ethnic groups and their activity participation, and that also was seen in their communication patterns. All right, so that's the first trend to talk about, just the characteristics of outdoor recreation visitors. The second one is visitor use measurement. Now that's very, very relevant for us, for our group, because that's the reason why I'm here, primarily, is for the workshop last week. And that workshop was about this topic of visitor use measurement. It addressed the question, how many people go to your park or your forest or reserve, whatever kind of area that is, a protected area of some sort, who goes there? How many people go there? Well, in the past, in the tradition, we don't do a good job of that. It's a very poor quality measurement. It's inconsistent, so different places do different things. Incomplete, so maybe they count some people. If they have a gate, they count some people that are easy, or they sell tickets. You have to pay. We went to the park here, we had a wristband, we had to go in. So they had a good count of us. They know we were there, and they know who we are. That's part of the newer measurement, but it's very incomplete. If we talk about your ECMBO has what, 300, 320 different areas, similar to our United States national parks, 300 some, very different types. Some are big, huge, famous areas. Some are very small. They don't have the same kind of staff or resources. So they don't all do things the same way. And they count visitors. They don't count all of them typically. And that's something we heard a lot last week. When we talked to the managers from 22 different areas, each of them told us about their measurement. Some were very good, and some were they didn't do very much. And many of them said the same kind of thing. They don't all do it the same way. That's what they're looking for from this workshop. They want a methodology that's more consistent, that's more complete, and then inflated. You know what inflated means? That means you want a high number. So that means like a bias or error. A lot of times the park manager, they want to show a bigger number of visitors because then that makes them seem more important. They can get bigger budget for bigger numbers of visitors. So they really have an incentive to have a wrong answer, too high of an answer. So that was kind of the old trend, and that was about true for maybe up to maybe 20 years ago. Started to change then. The newer thing, of course, I didn't really say good measurement or excellent, just improve. So they're always trying to improve, and I think that's the goal of our workshop here. So now we try to be more comprehensive, count everything. We try to be more accurate, and then we try to be defensible. So if we give a number, say, okay, this park has 500,000 visitors per year. Is someone going to believe you when you tell them that? Then you back that up, show your method, show how you calculated that. Then you have defensible measure. The example here is one we talked about a lot last week. It's our national visitor use monitoring project. This goes on in our national forests, similar to your ECMBO. Now this kind of study, it goes on, and every year This has gone on since what, 2000? Yeah. We've gone through this now four different times already, I think. Every fourth year, there's many forests. Maybe there's 200 forests in the country, so they can't study all of those every year. So they do 1/4, or is it 1/5 now? I'm not sure. It's something like that. A quarter of them. So in 4 years, they do all of them. And then there's also a repeating cycle. So if you do the study this year, then you wait 3 more years, you do again. So you then can start to, after 4 times, you have a trend data, so you can look at what's happening. Is your use growing? Is it staying the same, or is it changing in type, that sort of thing. So this is also, it's a funded mandate. So that means that when they created this program, they didn't just say, okay, this is a job for you now. You have to count your visitors. Go do that. This time they said, okay, now you have to do that, but we also give you money. So that's very important, because there's not enough personnel. Because the budgets are a problem here, we understand. Budgets are a problem in the United States also. Everyone has to do more work, for the same amount of pay. And we talked with people who were with us from the U.S. who work for this agency, Forest Service. They're generally doing jobs that were done before by 2 or 3 people. So if someone leaves, someone retires, they move away, they don't necessarily get to replace that person. They have to do more work. So this is a funded mandate, which is they actually gave money, so that's one of the reasons for success. This follows a consistent sampling plan, so everywhere this is going on in 1/4 of the areas, they're doing the same thing. They're using they're using traffic counters, so things that would go across the road, or hey, there might be a camera like they're using here now. Might be a traffic counter on a trail or on a road, but those are put there, and then also visitor survey. So they're talking to visitors at the same time when they're counting them on a sampling schedule. And they're trying to do this, they're trying to be comprehensive. They're doing for all types of areas. Someplace you have major attraction. I know many of your parks here, you have a lot of waterfalls, you have beaches, people go there, many people concentrate. But then we also have dispersed areas where you can go and be alone. And that's very, very popular in America. One name for that kind of place is wilderness. So you can go and have solitude, and be alone, or see very few people. That's the kind of experience that people are looking for, and we're trying to manage for that. So that's undeveloped, and then I mentioned before day use and overnight, they're counting that as well. So what about some results? Again, this is a very big study. I'm only going to give a few results. But the recreation use, when they started doing this, they were estimating much higher. Many more visits, maybe 3 or 4 times bigger. I think they said 800 million. The Forest Service said we have 800 million visitors. That's the most of any government agency. You have to give us the most money to do this. Well, now they did the study. It's more like 200 million. So 250 or something like that, I remember, after the first cycle, first round of all the forests, much lower, but now people would believe that. So it didn't actually hurt it. Now it was a new baseline and more credible evidence. Now they also include a profile of the visitors. They know where they're coming from. This can only come from the survey. You can count the visitors. You don't have to talk to them. You can use a counter, mechanical or electronic, or you can count them from a person making observation. But to get a profile, then you need to actually talk to people to get most of the information. So what do we ask in the profile? Questions Where do you come from? How far are you traveling? Where are you going? How long are you staying? How many people? That's all the kind of trip pattern. Also, there's one section of questions is about spending. How much money do you spend? Because they want to know the economic impact. Not only do they want to know the number, how many visitors, but how much money is that worth to the area? What is the economic significance or impact? So we ask questions, tell them, give them a list, 10 or 12 things. How much do you spend for transportation? If you're driving, how much do you spend for gasoline, petroleum? How much do you spend for food, fees, entrance fee, many categories, and then that becomes a measure of the economic impact. Then also the satisfaction. How do you feel about your visit? Do you have a good experience? And we measure that on a scale. I'll show you some example in a few minutes. Then with these studies, because everything is going on the same in many different areas in the whole country, we also have the so-called value-add study. Value-added studies, these are extra ones that we can work on with specific areas. So we'll deal with local managers, people who are the manager of that particular park or forest or maybe even one place within that area. The person who is responsible for that, they think they have a problem, so they want some help, they want some research. They'll talk to us if we're already doing the other study. That means we're already there. We have a survey. We have people who are working there, usually students. They're there collecting the interviews. So that means we can do more and we can add. So we can look at some preferences for management. We can look at motivation. What is the reason? Why are people going? What are they looking for? What kind of experience? We can do further analysis to break down for certain places. We can compare one site versus another, or an activity group, or look at places that are the hot spots or the problem areas. Maybe bottlenecks for visitor capacity. All right, so this leads right into the trend number 3. Now this trend is about carrying capacity management. The carrying capacity means like, what is the capacity of a place, of an area for recreation? Originally that was called a carrying capacity. Now it's not really used, that term's not really used very much anymore. Nowadays use a different term like visitor capacity or just visitor use management or visitor impact management. Because what we know, well, this is the traditional approach, is they look for a magic number. Okay, here's our park, here's our place. What is the capacity? How many visitors can we have there? And they believe that you can just learn that. You can find that number through research. So you might just, it would depend on it. There would be a scientific answer to that number. And the solution would be usually that you determine a capacity, and then you restrict the use to that. So this is, if we just look at where we are right now in this room, there's a capacity of this room. And everyone has to sign for the course and for the certificate, and there's only so many seats, and all full. So we are really at the full capacity of this room. Now we could have more people in here. We could have people standing, but that's not going to be desirable. So that's not within our capacity. And that's the same concept for the park. But it's much more difficult because the park doesn't have seats like this. And some places do. Some places have a capacity. Very easy to calculate, like a parking lot. You have so many spaces. Not all parking lots have that. Some do. So you can restrict that use through that. But it's much more difficult to determine a capacity for a park or forest area, because it's a large area and it doesn't have the kind of facility capacity we're talking about like for this room. So the current trend, and this is where the management frameworks become very important, is to focus on now what is the capacity. It's not a question. We change the question. So what are you really trying to provide? What are the desired social and ecological conditions? It comes back, what is your objective? And then you can talk about how do you get to that objective. So to do that, then we have to use both science and judgment together. Is the pointer good?
Yeah, the pointer is.
Oh yeah. So yeah, this is not just a matter. We can't just go out and measure some things. We have to also make decisions. We have to go back and say, well, what are we trying to do? That's the judgment. We use something called indicators and standards. So these are things we can measure. So this might be something like an indicator of environmental impact, something like a trail erosion or loss of vegetation, damage to the resource. What we want to understand is the cause and effect relationship. What is it actually that because of too many people that's causing a problem, or is there something else that might be related to that? And we then now have a wide range of management options. So many places don't have capacity limit. Many places do not want to have capacity because the public does not want to be restricted. They want to go there. They don't want to go to the park and say, see that it's closed, you can't come in because it's too full. They would like another management option to make it, to allow more visitors. So we'll go through one example of this one. This is a capacity study that was for a national park where I was working. It's called Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Okay, so here's map. This is where it is. Here's Las Vegas, this famous destination here. Many people visit here. They're not really looking mostly for a national park experience. Most of them, they're looking to go to the casino, go to the city, have a fine dining and drinking and gambling. But there's a big population goes there, and then here's a big population base also. This is about maybe 4 hour driving distance. So people can easily drive from Los Angeles to this lake here. And a lot of people within 4 hour drive of this many people. And this is created by 2 dams. The Hoover Dam is here, this is Lake Mead. And the next one, this shows better this area. It's considered one national park, but it's very oriented towards water-based recreation. So people aren't going there to see the historic, to really experience nature and solitude. They're going there to go on the lake, to go on the water. That's very similar to many of your areas. You have a lot of beach areas, beach parks where many people go, lakes, and so forth. This is a lake. So here's Lake Mead. This is one, and here's Hoover Dam. This is all the Colorado River. The river's coming down over here from Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon National Park is a few hours up there. That's very different kind of scene, but that same river comes down, and you have Hoover Dam, and it creates this big lake. And then the water comes from the dam and it goes down. Here it's like river, and it widens out and it becomes more like a lake. This is called Lake Mojave. So my data is really based on this one, because this is smaller. This is closer to the population. This is where they had more of the capacity problems. All right, so this is now a time for me to introduce some management ideas or concepts. So here's a couple of things that were used in this study. And one of those is called the ROS, Recreation Opportunity Spectrum. That was something that was developed, I think, around the 1970s and 80s. So it's an older concept that's been around. I'll show you what's included in that. It's basically a zoning idea. So it takes an area. It says you have many different kinds of recreation opportunities there, from high use, high density, developed area to primitive areas, and the agency wants to try to provide that diversity. The second one here is the limits of acceptable change and visitor impact management. These are things that I was involved in establishing back in the 80s and 90s. So these concepts were used also. These are the management frameworks that are being used. And then we basically did an inventory, not online, just a baseline, I should say, inventory of the physical and biological and social factors of this area. So when we talk about that first concept, ROS, Recreation Opportunity Spectrum, usually it's something like this. There's in this case, 5 different types of areas. From the primitive, some of those places are far away. There's no very difficult access. You cannot get there except by take a long ride, long boat trip, or a long trip on land in a 4-wheel drive. Primitive areas and then semi-primitive are a little bit more developed, and it's a range because the urban park is the most developed and the high-use area. And I'll show you an example of urban park area in just a minute. Then this is the other framework, limits of acceptable change framework. And this is a general, because there's several different versions of this, but they all are similar in terms of their content and how they work. So they usually start off, there's a process to go through. You start with some objectives and standards, and then you actually do some research, you measure some things, take inventory data. This means you're measuring your use, you're measuring your impact. Then you actually can do a comparison. If you know what your standards are, what you're trying to do, and then you know what's happening there, you can compare that. You do that comparison and say, okay, if everything here is meeting our standards, this is what we're trying to do, and our data shows that, that's good. That's no problem. We don't have to go set a capacity, we don't have to change, put any restrictions on, do anything different. So this way, we would continue our management, and then we would monitor that for the future. But here, sometimes we find, no, it's not being met. This place has too many people. There's too much problem here. The environment is getting damaged. Quality is going down. The visitors not happy. Their quality is going down. So we say no. Then we're going to do change in management. That's when it's important to know, well, what is really causing the change? What is causing the problem, and what is the best solution? So they could change management. They might put a capacity limit on, or they might say, no, we'll just change the rules. Say we could limit the length of stay, or we could do some kind of zoning. We could separate some users and not have to do restrictions. They have many choices here, but again, they'll go and monitor, they'll measure again in the future, and then they can just start over. So it's a continuous process. It's just a simple, logical process. Nothing more than that, really. Okay, so just to go through this is a very big study and lots of data, so I'll only show just a couple of examples. But one of the setting the standards, what's involved in that, and for different limiting factors. So of concern usually in outdoor recreation and in parks and protected areas, they're concerned with safety, always is a paramount. You need to make sure your visitors are safe. And how can that be defined? Here it's in terms of how much lake surface do you need for every boat. This is focusing on the number of boats that would be on the water of these big lakes. Shoreline, that's another factor. If people are they're taking a boat, they're going on the water, they might be going to camp, so they need some shoreline space, or even if they're only day user, they still want to be able to get off the water. They need a place to go so they can have their lunch, or they can do go to the beach. They want to have a full experience, so they need shoreline, they need safety, they need shoreline, and then the social is just how many people are there. Is there too many people to interfere with their experience? So that's based on the survey data. These are things you can look at. You can measure these in your inventory. You can have a GIS system measure the amount of acres or hectares on the lake surface, and you can measure the shoreline, see how much there is, and say how much is usable. But here you need to understand, what is the visitor experience? What do they feel about that? So just for an example of the standards, and here's the 5 different kinds of areas. So these are from some guidelines or some other study areas. So for primitive, then you need the most water, 18 acres. If we put that in hectares, that's about probably 7 or 8 hectares. The acre is equal to like 2.5 or 2.5 acres are in a hectare. So this is a big space, so every boat should have this amount of space on the water for safety. And that, for a primitive, it's more, and for the urban park, then they only need 4.5 acres per boat. But that's still quite a bit of space. But those are some standards that could be used in the management study. Now here's the one place we focused on where we found the biggest congestion. This is this place called Catherine Landing. Here's many boats. This is just where people are bringing their boat with their car on a trailer. You see many different types of boats here. Some speed boats, there's some sailboats back here, personal watercraft, jet skis. This is kind of a little pontoon boat. So that's a boat more like to have a party on. You go out here, and it's not as fast, but you can have a lot of beer there and have a lot of swimming. Very popular recreation boat, but very different. You can see they're close together. This creates a problem for a possible conflict situation. So this is why we're doing a study in this kind of area. Now I showed you standards for safety. We also measured crowding, and I'll just go through some little bit of data to show you what happened here. And say, okay, so we measure crowding. Say, how crowded did you feel? Now we all understand this is a different perception in Brazil from in the United States, where there's much more concern than in here in Brazil. But if we measure on a 9-point scale for a primitive area, we think the crowding should be very low. It should only be like maybe 1 or 2 on that scale. And if we go to the rural natural, it can go up to 3, and urban natural 4, and the maximum 5 here. So even the urban park area, like this one here, we'd say, well, that should still be, if we ask people how crowded they are here, we still would want that to be not more than 5 on that scale to be achieving our goal. And we'll see how that turns out here in a minute. So here's some results of the survey data. So this is showing here, we asked them 4 times, how crowded do you feel? How many people are here? How do you feel about that? We asked them that when they start their trip, when they're just at the boat ramp, when they're out on the lake, along the shoreline, or at the end of their trip. So they have to answer this question for 4 different times in the survey. And then, so these are the categories here from, but this then we ask them another question. How did this affect your quality of experience? How do you feel about this? If you say it's crowded, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, I wonder if we shouldn't just take a quick breath and make sure. Do you want to clarify that they understand the satisfaction of crowding?
You want to explain? So that's just two ways to measure crowding, and she can explain maybe a little better.
Estou fazendo anotações aqui que depois eu vou dar um resumão assim para vocês, mas o que ele pediu foi só para eu falar agora que lá eles têm muito essa questão da aglomeração. Crowding é aglomeração. Então a ideia era saber se as pessoas estavam se sentindo muito aglomeradas. E aí o que eles já sabem é que aqui no Brasil a gente não tem isso. A gente gosta de ter mais pessoas por perto. Né? E aí o pessoal que está trabalhando na pesquisa com os tablets realmente viu nos resultados que aqui as pessoas não acham que estão assim aglomeradas. A gente gosta, tem uma questão cultural. Mas aí depois eu vou fazer um resumão de tudo.
Yeah, good, thanks. So this just shows how if people feel this level of crowding, how does that affect their experience? So if crowding is very low, say only maybe only 1 to 2, if that's what they say for how crowded it feels, then only maybe 20%, around 20% say that's a bad thing. That's reducing my enjoyment. That's a small number. And then that goes up here. If the crowding gets a little more, then like it's between 3 and 4, then it's about 1/3 or more of the people are saying, no, this is not good. This is affecting my experience. So when we jump up here, actually these are not so different here. And this is why the crowding standard of 5 was selected. Because when you get to 5, then you're getting up to generally close to 50 or 60% of people are saying, this is impacting my experience. This is not good. It's too crowded when it gets to that level. So that's the kind of data that was used in setting that standard. And then in terms of capacity, how does that relate? Now here, this is the crowding score. This is the number of boats that were there. And these were measured from aerial, from flights. Airplanes were in every day when the survey was going on. Airplanes were up and people were counting and taking photographs. So how many boats are there? That's these measures here. So anywhere from maybe 100 to a maximum of close to 800 boats are out there. And how do these boats relate to the perception of crowding? We can see there's a relationship there where it goes up. More boats does translate to more crowding, higher crowding. So if we want to talk about a standard of 4, we can look across here and say basically this line here is the extrapolation line. So 400 boats, close to 400 boats gives a capacity there. If we want to go up to 5, where does that cross here? At 560 boats, so we can actually relate the perception data to the number of boats on the zone, and then this kind of data would be used in the use management. All right, so we'll finish up with that. That's a little bit more in-depth example of one of the studies focusing on the capacity. What we found there is that peak use on that lake, sometimes it's too crowded. Peak use exceeds the management standards for some places, like where we looked at, but it only occurs at those certain places and only occurs not often, only 2 or 3 times per year. The normal summer weekend is what they're managing for, and then normal summer every weekend for 3-4 months, that's fine. And the capacity problems, they're only at the one location. That's where the data was showing the relationships for. So our recommendation is if they want to have more boats, they really have room for more boats most of the time. Most of the days of the year, even the summer weekends, fine. But if you want to have capacity, you want to make more access point, more ramps, boat ramp, more marinas or expand marina, you should do those in different locations on the Okay, so let's move on to the next trend, Customer service. This is something that came about, maybe in the last 20 years also, changed from this traditional view of where there was little attention. The government agency, a national park or national forest or ECMBO, whatever it is, they didn't really care much about business. They are just they're just managing the recreation area. But in the late 1990s, 2000s, that changed, and the management became much more marketing focused. So really, this is a good bridge to tourism, to the topic of tourism, because tourism is more about customer service, and that's where a lot of research about this topic came from, in the tourism literature. And then that was used, the same concept and the same tools were used in measuring satisfaction, and actually service quality became a concept, not only for tourism but outdoor recreation. This example comes from some other lakes that we studied. This was Army Corps of Engineers, not national park lakes, but other lakes that we have many of in the United States. So here's a model. Actually, this one, Robert probably could talk about this one better.
That's a great model there.
He thinks that's a good model because that was his doctoral dissertation. So he was there working with us at the time of this study, 20 years ago. But what we measured was, okay, here's a bunch of things we ask you questions about. You rate the quality of these things. So the quality of your appearance of your sites and your ranger patrols and staff and information. Here's crowding and conflict. But all of these items, about 20 items, that's a lot of things to talk about. They can be condensed to four kind of themes or domains of facilities, services, information, and recreation. And what we found, we measured these separately, and then their overall satisfaction, that's the goal of the management, is this one. They're trying to provide satisfied visitors. So then 3 of these four domains go to be a predictor of that. And there's many other studies we've done like this. Just one example. So let me go up to the final trend, which is the recreation fees, which we see also here is a new trend, or a very current trend. Didn't you say just where we went, we had to pay the fee yesterday? A national park we visit on a Saturday, 1 year ago probably, no fee there, but no facility either. It's very nicely developed now, really nice boardwalk, all modern, very new, and now they charge fee there. That's similar to in our country. So the traditional fee here is that there was no fee. It either was free, anyone can go there, they don't pay, or the fee was very low. The current trend, more places you have to pay a fee, and you have to pay a higher fee. I think we see that coming here also in Brazil. We'll use just some research here to illustrate this final one. When they started changing this program about 20 years ago, they wanted to see how people would respond to that. If you put on the fee here, what will the customers do? What will happen? Will the visitors stop coming? For some of them, you'll reduce visitors because now they have to pay. That's one thing they're worried about. You say that probably happened where we were. We had almost a solitary experience at the waterfalls, just ourselves for 15 minutes or longer. Not very crowded at all. Maybe part of that is because people have to pay the fee there now, or maybe it's due to the season. Who knows? But that's the new trend, is more fees and higher fees. I'll just have one example and then we'll open for questions. This is an area that's in California. Here's the National Forest here, and here's California. And this area is called the Mono Basin Scenic Area. It's a lake and it has some facilities. And we were doing a fee perception study at this place. So what are some things we did? Usually you're studying about the fees, then you have to decide, well, how much will the fee be? there's a structure to the fee. So what some of the questions we ask is called WTP. That means willingness to pay. What are you willing to pay, or the visitor or the client, the guest? So when we ask that question in the survey, generally what the economists tell us how to ask this kind of question. So we don't say just, well, how much do you think this fee should be? Because they don't trust that answer. They think there'll be biased answer. So they make a more of an experimental approach. Say, okay, here's some different prices. We're going to only give you one of these prices. So would you be willing to pay $3? And then that's yes or no. But then the next visitor doesn't get $3. It's random. Maybe the next visitor gets 4 or 6. So all of these people get only one question. They ask, are they willing to pay that amount to enter? And then here's how the results look. So if it's only $3, then most of the people say yes. 40 say yes, 11 no. But here when we go up to $6, it's become opposite. So now most of the visitors say, no, I'm not paying $6. Only 7 of those compared to 38. So we see there's a pattern, a relationship there. And then if we ask them after that question, well, what is the maximum you would pay, regardless of what you said on just yes or no, then that answer really became around $4. All of them was 3.96, and these didn't really vary. So if you were asked any amount, you still came up with that same result. And that wasn't, so these they look a little bit different, but they're not significantly different. From a statistical analysis, they're the same. But we also did a mailback survey. When we had people that were interviewed at the site, those are already visiting there, they're not represented. So we can't ask them as many questions as we want to because they're on vacation, they're on a visit. So we ask them now about again we repeat that willingness to pay question, but we also ask another question, what is appropriate? What do you think the price should be? And then the results came out a little bit different. So again, they started off with this is called a bid. It's kind of a contingent valuation. That's another name for this approach. They have a bid here. And now in the mailback, these numbers are much bigger. So people who did the mail survey, they were really willing to spend almost twice as much. They would say an average of $7, maybe ranging from 6 to 8. It's much higher than from the on-site survey. So that tells us, well, maybe this is a different bias in the sample. People who actually respond to the mail survey are really more committed people who are willing to pay more. But we also ask them then, what do you think is the appropriate price? And that is much lower. Then that's only about $5. So that's closer to the 4 that we had before. So this is just some data about understanding how do people respond to fee. If you're going to put a fee structure in a place, you didn't charge admission before, now you're going to, how much money are you going to charge people? Well, we did some other analysis, so I'll kind of skip through this for the sake of time. Things that were related. So basically, just to summarize quickly, if people have more experience, the more they visit, the less they want to pay. So that makes sense. You go there a lot, you don't want to pay every time you go there, but then they have a different kind of structure for that. So you can have an annual pass, like a season or annual pass, and that's not paying every time. The more you visit, you may not, in this case, they don't think it's necessary, they don't think they should have to pay a fee, and they don't trust it. They don't trust the government agency. And I don't know, you might have that in Brazil too. Lack of trust of government. Yeah, we have a problem with that. Fairness, if they think it's fair, we ask the question, how fair is this fee? If they think it's fair, it's okay. They're willing to pay. Things that were not related, though, actually income. So we would think, okay, fee, if people are rich, they have a lot of money, they don't care about the fee. And the poor people would care. The poor people would oppose the fee or would be on a relationship, but no, that wasn't true. That's probably rich people are rich because they don't want to pay for things. It wasn't a factor. The effectively, so the fairness, we saw the fairness mattered, but the effectiveness, so they think this fee is useful, is it helping, good effective management, that was not related. All right, so that's the end. That's the end of the trends. I'll just have one last slide here, I believe, with some other trends that we've seen. These are, we've covered the main ones already, but public participation. We've seen more public participation. And again, I think that's very common here, what we saw at our workshop last week. There's different, there's a lot of partners in providing recreation. There's guide services, there's City Hall, and there's a lot of chance for public to be involved. That's a growing trend in the United States. We see a growth in some kind of risky and adventurous activities, and we see a very big growth in ecotourism and heritage tourism. So some of these are tourism trends. These are the fastest growing forms of tourism. This is a worldwide trend, I think, not just the United States. And then finally, technology. Things are changing, so there's a lot more use of technology. We can use that in management. People use that in their experience. People have the phones, they have apps, they can do their reservations. Everything is changing. There's new activities because of new technology that's making those possible, creating those activities. So with that, now we have time for questions. I will stop. And this is my contact information. If you have questions or want to send me an email, you can use that. Jasmine, I'm sure, can provide this information. You don't have to write it down. But, so, if you have questions.
Antes das perguntas, então, eu só vou fazer um resumo para vocês do que ele falou, para aqueles que não entenderam 100%. Né? Então, ele mostrou 5 tendências que estão acontecendo agora em relação às áreas naturais e o uso público. Né? Então, a primeira que ele mostrou foi em relação ao público atual. Isso está mudando, não é mais só homens e brancos. Agora a gente já vê outras etnias e também mais mulheres participando das atividades em áreas naturais. Aí a segunda tendência que ele mostrou é em relação ao programa que eles têm lá nos Estados Unidos, que se chama VIM, que é o monitoramento do uso pelo visitante, que o pessoal que trabalha comigo no Labitam viu, já está trabalhando também, que é a questão dos tablets. Né? Então eles fazem essa pesquisa para saber como é que está a satisfação do visitante e também saber quanto é que o visitante gastou nessas áreas naturais. Tá? Então isso eles fazem hoje em dia porque eles tinham uma estimativa e eles achavam que eram 800 milhões de visitantes por ano nas florestas nacionais americanas. E aí esse número é muito alto, assim, né? Como é que você vai provar isso? Então com esse projeto, com esse programa que eles fazem a pesquisa de satisfação e também eles contam o número de visitantes, eles descobriram que são 250 milhões de visitantes por ano nas florestas nacionais. Só para vocês terem uma ideia, o pessoal do terceiro ano já teve esse número comigo, a gente tem atualmente no Brasil, que conta o número de visitantes, 8 milhões de visitantes. Então veja a diferença, como eles vão muito mais para os parques deles. Né? Aí a terceira tendência que ele mostrou foi a da capacidade de carga. Isso também é tema da nossa aula do terceiro ano. em que, às vezes, a capacidade de carga não é só um número mágico, não adianta você ter aquele número. Você tem que saber o que fazer com aquele número. Né? Então, capacidade de carga seria o número máximo de pessoas que pode ir numa determinada área sem você ter tanto impacto. E aí, para falar um pouquinho mais sobre isso, ele mostrou 3 metodologias que são usadas, são as mais usadas a nível mundial, né? E aí ele mostrou também o Lago Mead, que fica lá perto de Las Vegas, onde ele fez um estudo. Então, das metodologias, o que ele mostrou primeiro foi uma chamada ROS, R-O-S, né, que é o Espectro de Oportunidades Recreativas. Aí depois ele mostrou o LAC, que é o Limite Aceitável de Câmbio, que quem teve a palestra aqui com o Steve, uns meses atrás, ele falou do LAC, porque o Steve trabalhou criando o LAC, e ele falou também do VIM, que é o Visitor Impact Management, que essa foi a que ele criou. Tá? Então ele falou um pouquinho sobre o lago e como é que foi essa pesquisa e que cada barco tinha que ter um espaço específico, né, para que a pessoa não se sentisse tão aglomerada, né, e aí ele mostrou os gráficos ali nessa questão da aglomeração. E foi aquilo que eu comentei com vocês, no Brasil a gente não se sente aglomerado, né, e nos Estados Unidos a maioria das pessoas estavam se sentindo com muito barco por perto e aí elas ficam insatisfeitas. Tá? E aí, eles fizeram essa pesquisa também utilizando imagens aéreas, então eles sobrevoavam e aí tiravam as fotos para ver mais ou menos quantos barcos estavam ao mesmo tempo. Tá? E aí a quarta tendência que ele mostrou foi a satisfação dos clientes, né? No caso da satisfação dos visitantes. E aí agora isso é levado em consideração muito mais, antes não era tanto, então por isso que é uma tendência. Hoje em dia as pessoas querem saber se os visitantes estão saindo satisfeitos ou não. Isso entra também na pesquisa que a gente vem fazendo com os tablets, né? Essa é uma das perguntas. E aí ele mostrou o modelo que o Robert criou no doutorado dele, né? Quando o Alan foi o orientador, então que eles verificaram essa satisfação dos visitantes num local lá em Oregon, nos Estados Unidos. E aí, por fim, a quinta tendência que ele mostrou é a cobrança de entrada, né, que isso também não era tão frequente lá nos Estados Unidos e agora é. Então, as pessoas estão cada vez cobrando mais, esse foi um outro estudo que ele fez, e aí essa cobrança, então, ele viu que aqui também está acontecendo. Então, a gente foi no Buraco do Padre com ele e eu expliquei que o Buraco do Padre, até alguns anos atrás, não era cobrado entrada, e agora é cobrado entrada, e por isso que tem, né, uma infraestrutura bem diferente. Então ele viu, inclusive, a nova trilha, né, que tem ali a trilha elevada e tudo mais. Isso eles também estão fazendo então lá nos Estados Unidos. E aí ele mostrou os resultados, né, quando ele perguntava para as pessoas no local especificamente, deu mais ou menos ali uns $3. Elas falavam que elas gostariam de pagar mais ou menos uns $3. E aí quando eles fizeram essa pesquisa mandando por correio, isso é uma coisa muito comum lá, eles mandam por correio. As pesquisas já assim, tipo, com o selo pago, a pessoa responde e manda de volta. E aí o pessoal né, quem recebeu a pesquisa pelo correio, eles falaram que eles pagariam mais ou menos uns $5. Então eles viram que tem essa diferença de quem vai no lugar sempre. Esses querem pagar menos, por quê? Porque eles vão lá sempre, então eles têm que gastar muito mais. E aqueles que eles mandaram por correio, então pagariam um pouco mais, tá? E aí, por fim, então ele mostrou outras tendências, que é a questão da participação do público nessas pesquisas e nesse incremento do ecoturismo. Lá também está aumentando cada vez mais o ecoturismo. E a última tendência que ele mostrou, então, foi a questão da tecnologia. Isso também, cada vez mais, eles estão utilizando aplicativos, né, e outras formas aí tecnológicas de contar os visitantes e de saber de ter essa satisfação. Certo? Agora sim, perguntas. Another question. Ok.
So,
Ele só quer falar uma coisinha antes de...
Alan and you all met Steve McCool, right? Many of you met Steve.
Ele está perguntando que alguns de vocês, ele está falando que vocês conheceram o Steve, né?
So
foi a outra
Steve-
palestra que a gente teve aqui.
Steve, Alan, and myself, we are parks manager researchers.
Então, ele, o Alan e o Steve, eles trabalham com essa questão de pesquisas relacionadas a unidades de conservação.
So you were all tourism
right?
E aí vocês vão ser turismólogos.
It's really important to understand how you connect with these parks.
E aí é importante entender como é que vocês se conectam com essas unidades de conservação.
Because you, as tourism people, have an understanding of people.
Então vocês entendem, como turismólogos, a questão das pessoas.
And all those people in the parks, they come from the communities.
E essas pessoas nos parques, elas vêm das comunidades.
Or they come from Canada or
Ou eles vêm
Germany,
de
USA.
outros países.
But that's what you understand. You understand the people and you understand tourism.
Então é isso que vocês entendem, as pessoas e o turista.
And so you're really important. So
Então vocês são bem importantes para entender.
understanding how people work inside or recreate inside parks is really important. So we need you, young tourism professionals, right?
Então ele
Alan?
está falando que ele precisa das pessoas da área de turismo.
You know, we have students, our department is called Recreation, Park, and Tourism Management. So it has all of those things, recreation and park and tourism.
Então o curso que ele tem lá na universidade é Recreação, Parque e Turismo. Esse é o nome do curso que eles têm de graduação e de pós-graduação.
But they're all related.
Mas eles são todas, isso está tudo relacionado.
Some students may think, oh, I'm a tourism student.
Então alguns acham que eles são estudantes só de
I'm
turismo,
parks, I'm a park
ou só de
management.
parque, ou só
There's
de
like
manejo.
two different camps and groups, but really there's a lot of similarities.
Então tem muita similaridade, né, para os
So it's
estudantes.
important to remember that.
Então é importante lembrar isso.
They need to understand the same,
Todo mundo entende a mesma coisa, né, como é que isso funciona.
put together, yeah.
That's it.
Questions? Perguntas? Alguém tem alguma pergunta? Pode fazer em português, não precisa ficar...
O número de pessoas que vão para o valor que elas gostariam de pagar não seria muito barato para o impacto?
So she's asking if the number of people that are willing to pay less money, if that money is enough for the impact that they cause in the area.
So, say again, the last part? Is that enough?
If the one that wants to pay $3, if that
Yeah.
amount of money, it's not like if it's too cheap, if
Yeah.
it's not enough money because they cause a lot of impacts in the area. $3
Yeah.
is enough
Yeah.
for that.
It's more complicated, you know, because
Complicado.
the areas they get government, they have money from government
Eles
also.
recebem dinheiro do governo, então não é só esse dinheiro de
The fee is just to help,
Então isso é só para ajudar.
and not every place has it. But
Isso
people,
não é todo lugar que tem.
one thing, people are willing to pay more to have better quality.
Então lá as pessoas pagariam mais para ter mais qualidade na visita.
So one thing that happened with this program, when it changed, then the rule changed, so the money, if people pay, they're at a park or some area,
Então se eles
that
pagam no parque,
money stays there.
isso que mudou
The
agora.
money can be spent, like 80% of that will stay, that goes to the management of that place.
Então agora o que
And
mudou é que
people like that, they're more willing to pay when they know that. So they tell people, they publicize, market that.
então o dinheiro fica naquela unidade, eles pagam e aí a pessoa sabe que 80% do que ela está pagando vai ficar naquele lugar para ajudar aquele lugar, então daí é diferente. Eles não pagam, eles pagariam mais.
The old way, and I think this is still the way here, from what we learned from many areas, they collect the money, send it to Brasilia, we send to Washington, disappears, it doesn't go back, people don't trust.
Então, o modo antigo é que eles pagavam e aí esse dinheiro ia para Washington e aí desaparecia. Então as pessoas não confiam nisso. Então por isso que agora esse novo modelo, né, eles deixam lá avisado quantos por cento fica naquela unidade. E aí ele acha que aqui também é a mesma coisa, que o dinheiro daí vai para Brasília e desaparece. Everybody agrees that.
Agrees.
Everybody goes to Brasília and
Só isso
disappears.
quando chega em Brasília.
Yeah.
Mais alguma pergunta?
Eu.
Diga.
Nos Estados Unidos tem. Quais são os números de geoparques nos Estados Unidos?
He's asking about the geoparks USA, and I think we answer that.
Geofund. Yeah, you guys, because we don't, that's new. That's
É
a new
novo.
concept.
É
We don't
conceito
have.
novo. Então eles não têm nenhum ainda.
What's the question?
How many geoparks in USA?
0. So in all of the Americas, the North America, South America, Central America, there are what, 4?
Então, todas as Américas, ele está perguntando se são 4.
There's over,
Now we have 2 more than you
okay,
mentioned.
6?
Então agora a gente tem 6, né? Que é 1 no Uruguai, 1 no Brasil, 2 no Canadá e 2 no México.
How
Então, são
many in
6.
China?
Na China tem tipo 26.
So the Americas are very slow in joining the geopark movement.
Então lá nos Estados Unidos eles estão ainda muito devagar nessa questão do geoparque.
But we are proposing the first geopark, first or second geopark in West Virginia.
Então a gente está propondo o primeiro ou o segundo lá em West Virginia.
So Jasmine, you can probably talk about that in Portuguese.
É o projeto que eu faço parte com eles lá, então é essa questão do geoparque. A gente está fazendo então essa proposta já há mais de um ano e a gente espera que seja o primeiro geoparque dos Estados Unidos. Pelo menos é o primeiro que já teve uma visita do Comitê de Geoparques dos Estados Unidos. Então pode ser que a gente seja o primeiro. Mais alguma pergunta? I think that's it.
No more?
No, I think they're shy.
Okay.
Bom, então eu agradeço a todos. Acho que foi bem válido. Espero que vocês tenham gostado da apresentação e aí a gente vai ter daqui algumas semanas, eu não vou prometer quando, os certificados online, mas aí a gente avisa igual a gente fez do outro, né? Então acho que é isso, agradeço a todos.